This talk focuses on an action that Hugo Chavez took very early in his presidency after he was sworn in 1999. President Chavez banned public school fees, and as a result of that action, 1 million more students attended school. A free education in Venezuela has been a right since 1870, when the president decreed that establishing free public education is a responsibility of the government. So the concept of free public education has been around for a long time. Unfortunately, there was a dictator, Gomez, for almost 30 years in the early 1900s, and he really did not make a priority out of public education. He reduced spending on education, and only about 20% of the school-aged children were enrolled in schools in 1935. Subsequent dictators following Gomez were a little bit more benevolent, and they increased funding for public schooling. Public enrollment in schools increased to about 41% and continued to increase until about 1950. Unfortunately, again in 1950, a dictator took over, and funding for public education was not a priority. He reduced spending on education, and by 1958, when he was overthrown, only about 55% of school-age children were in school. What started then was 40 years of democratically elected presidents, 1958, and in the 1970s, oil prices were very high. Government income was high, and education was a high priority of these governments. And so there was a rapid expansion in the number of schools and teachers. Government funding was high, and school enrollment increased by about 30%. Again, unfortunately, toward the end of the 1990s, oil prices had declined, government income was reduced, public spending for education declined by 37% between 1990 and 1996 in the second administration of President Caldera. So looking at the end of the 1990s, public spending had reduced considerably. And as a result, public schools in the 1990s started charging fees to compensate for the lack of funding from the government. Again, public education was supposed to be free, but the schools, in order to make up for the government shortfall in funds, started charging fees. And poor families simply could not afford to send their children to school. Now, Hugo Chavez was sworn in as president on February the 2nd, 1999, and 3 days later, on February the 5th, 1999, Chavez ordered the abolition of tuition fees in schools. That was, again, deemed to be a public responsibility of the government. It was supposed to be free, and that's what Chavez reinstituted. As a result of Chavez's actions, public school enrollment increased from about 5.5 million in 1998 to 6.5 million in 2001. And by 2004, elementary school enrollment, while Chavez was early in his presidency again, was at 99%. And the New York Times had an article where they explained this connection. After President Chavez forbade public schools from charging a fee to attend what supposedly was going to be a free public school. It was a common practice as government financing dried up before Chavez took over. And as a result of Chavez's action, the New York Times reports school enrollments increased by about 1 million since the Chavez government took office in February 1999. Again, an action that the president took only 3 days after he was inaugurated for his first term led to an increase of 1 million kids going to school. Now, all of the documentation that was used to put this talk together is available on the blog, The Venezuela Reader. You can consult the blog and get a write-up of the case study about the the cessation of school fees.